All right, well, we've had more than a week to process what happened to the Phillies, and let's get into what they should probably do in the offseason. Now, the free agents that they have are Kyle Schwarber, JT Realmuto, Harrison Bader has a mutual club option. You've got Max Kepler, Jordan Romano, David Robertson, and Jose Alvarado has a club option, but they'll likely pick that up. So really what you're looking at is three actual questions. Harrison Bader, Kyle Schwarber, JT Realmuto. I already covered Kyle Schwarber and JT Realmuto in a previous video. You can click the link in whatever corner. I don't know. I think it's going to be this one, but you'll see the link. You can click the link and I'll explain why exactly I am uber confident that both players will in fact be back. I have stated on the record that I have a better chance of being on the Phillies than those two players not being on the Phillies next year. That's how confident I am. But something needs to change. Something desperately needs to change with this team because you can't run it back again. They ran it back last year, and I think some people were fine with it, and I was one of those people. I said, look, they ran into the hot team of the New York Mets. They're a really good baseball team, and they proved that again this year. They were the second best record in all of baseball, but again, they fell short in the playoffs. And it was the big bats, and the big bats aren't going anywhere. You know, Dave Nabrowski comes out and says something like, well, I don't know if Bryce Harper will be like the impact player that he has previously been. Well, you know, I got asked by a teammate what I thought about those comments, and I go, well, look, I mean, the Phillies lost because of their manager, who he's already bringing back, and because of the big bats being Turner, Schwarber, and Harper. Well, you're not going to blame Kyle Schwarber because he's a free agent, you want him back. You're not going to blame Trey Turner because he led the league in batting. So you're going to look a little foolish. And you're not going to say something like, well, I don't know if he's ever going to be the player we thought he was going to be when you signed him for $330 million. So that leaves Bryce Harper, who's a player that I think can actually take that kind of criticism. I wouldn't have worded it that way. I thought it was a stupid way of wording things. I think, especially when it comes out that he got nominated for a Gold Glove at a position he's been playing for all of like 2.5 years. But I think it was Dombrowski's way of calling out the high-ticket players. And it's worth mentioning that even if Bryce Harper, if that statement is correct, and even if Bryce Harper never reverts back to an MVP form, $25 million for Bryce Harper, it was a steal when they signed that contract, and it's still a steal when you look at players in baseball that are getting paid way more than him at this point. You know, the salaries continue to go up. They're not going down. But I'm going to pencil in Kyle Schwarber back. I'm going to pencil in JT Realmuto being back because I'm just very, very confident in those players. But let's look at some changes. Everybody and their mother at this point knows that Nick Castellanos will not be back next year. His OBP was under 300. He had the worst year of his career. He got into it with the manager, maybe privately, but definitely publicly. And he actually had a pretty good postseason. You know, if you remember correctly, he was thrust into the starting role when Harrison Bader got injured, and he made an impact, a positive one at that. Now, he got caught stealing at third base, but and it wasn't even caught stealing, it was the bunt attempt. But he never should have been put in that situation. If the roster construction was correct, they would have had an actual speed threat to pinch run for him, which would have been Jhoan Rojas or even Justin Crawford. But look, it's beside the point. He will not be on the team. They're going to have to give him away and get nothing in return. They're likely going to have to attach a prospect to give him away, but some team will absolutely take him for the veteran quality. I'm interested to see if maybe the Miami Marlins might be a destination just to get their payroll up a little bit. You have a guy that is from Miami. I know Nick almost signed with the Marlins when he initially signed with the Phillies in that 5-year deal. He almost signed with the Marlins. So I wonder if sending Nick home, if that might be enticing for the Marlins, who lack veterans. They don't have vets on their team. So I think to get a veteran like Nick Castellanos might be worth it, but you're not getting anything in return. And I think at this point, Phillies fans know that. You're probably going to have to give up, a 11th, 12th, 13th rank. You're going to attach something. You're going to take money on. You're going to be paying that $20 million because at this point, he is just a very, very, very diminished asset. I always liked Nick Castellanos, but he's gone. And that's going to leave you with two positions that you are going to need to fill because Brandon Marsh will be back and he'll be playing left. Center field, I think, is Justin Crawford's job to lose. But what they need to do by giving him center field is let him play center field 162. None of this new age bullshit of, okay, he can only play lefties and he can play righties on Tuesdays, but Tuesdays on... No. None of that. because I think it has hurt players. And, look, at this point, Brandon Marsh is not in the daycare. He's in the nursing home. He's, 29 at this point. And he finally started gaining a little bit of the manager's trust to hit against lefties. I think we need to go back to the old school way of doing things. And I've always been a fan of this, of sink or swim, kid. Get out there. You're going to play against lefties. You're going to play against righties. And the good thing is, Dave Dombrowski said as much when he was asked, hey, did you ever consider bringing up Justin Crawford? And he said, yeah, we did. But at the time, we didn't really need it. And then we went out and got Harrison Bader. And, what's the point? And I agree with that. Like, what is the point of, I guess, bringing him up? You're going to burn a year of the arbitration. But bring him up, and he should be starting day one this year. I would have had no problem if they brought him up. And this is all hindsight being 2020. At the time, instead of the Harrison Bader move, I think I said as much. But looking back on it, the Harrison Bader move was one of the better moves at the deadline in terms of ROI. You save a year of Justin Crawford's arbitration, and he needs to be starting day one. He proved last year in his first year in AAA that they really weren't a match for him. I don't care about the fact that he doesn't really hit for pop. He's young. He's still growing into his body. You hope that will develop, and that was the scouting report on him when he was drafted. But you've got a guy that consistently steals 40-plus stolen bases. He's done it, I think, 3 years in a row at this point. All the dude does is get on base. And he is a perfect complement to this lineup to hit on the bottom of the lineup, to have that speed threat down there. So that hopefully when you come to the second and third time around, if you can get Crawford on the base pass and you can get Trey Turner on the base pass and then Schwarber comes up, I mean, you've got speed threats galore, and that's, I think, really going to benefit them. And I think that's one of the reasons why they were batting a Harrison Bader type, Brandon Marsh type, even a Bryson Stott down lower in the lineup, was because of the fact that they were a little bit of a speed threat. So I'm giving Justin Crawford center field, but right field, what do you do there? Now, I know a lot of people will go, oh, Kyle Tucker. Just go ahead and get Kyle Tucker. The Phillies payroll right now, they have $189 million dedicated to salaries. SpotTrack has the projected arbitration setting their payroll right now. And this is without Kyle Schwarber. This is without JT Realmuto. But they have the projected salary for next season at $247 million. Last year, it was around $290 for the Phillies. When you look at that number, you're not getting Kyle Tucker. You're not bringing back Kyle Schwarber and Kyle Tucker. But the big reason why you're not signing Kyle Tucker is because the Phillies are in a position right now, because they spent so much money, is they are going to pay their second and fourth draft choices on top of signing him to a massive contract. And I think Kyle Tucker is an incredible player. But you're not bringing... It's one of those, like, pick one or the other. You're either picking Kyle Schwarber or you're picking Kyle Tucker. And you can make the case for Kyle Tucker. Like, he actually plays the field. He's an incredible baseball player. But when you factor in the intangibles that Kyle Schwarber brings on top of what he brings at the plate, you're going to rather give that money to Kyle Schwarber, especially because playing DH, like, the power is not diminishing, So get the mindset of Kyle Tucker out of your mind. It's probably, if they sign anybody, it would be like a Max Kepler 1 year, $10 million contract. You'd hope to God it's not Max Kepler again, but it would be somebody of that ilk. What I would personally do is, they have another arbitration eligible player playing third base this season named Alec Boehm. I would move on from him. He's projected by SpotTrack to be getting $10 million for the arbitration number. That seems fair. He plays a key position of third base, but he's also versatile enough to play at first base as well, and I think the Phillies do like that. But when you look at tradable assets for the team, to me, it's Alec Boehm, it's Bryson Stott, those two guys. I go Alec Boehm over Bryson Stott just because Bryson Stott isn't reaching the closer to free agency like Alec Boehm is, just because they were drafted apart. Alec Boehm was drafted before him. So I also think that Bryson Stott's defense is really, really good. And even though he's never going to win a batting title, like we were told for years by the broadcast team, oh yeah, the Phillies think he's going to win a batting title, get fucked on that. He still will steal close to 30 bases. He will get on base, and he brings it an elite glove. Where Alec Boehm, like, I got to give him credit. It was like when he came up, it was, well, he doesn't hit it for any pop. And he still really doesn't. He hits, maybe like 20 bombs a year, and that's fine. But it was like, well, he's a butcher in the field. He worked on his defense. He's not a butcher anymore, and he's versatile enough. But he can get you a similar player in right field. I need the Alec Bohm of right field. And I think there will be some team out there that will have a surplus of outfielders. And they will have an Alec Bohm type. And what I mean by that is a guy that's in year, 3 or 4 of arbitration. Similar production probably, but he plays right field. And I think you trade Alec Bohm for a right fielder. And then what do you do for third base? I think you put Otto Kemp there. And I know people weren't overly impressed. Apparently, like he had a broken kneecap or some crap like that. But this guy was trending to be the International League MVP when he got called up. And he's very versatile. He can play, as we saw in the postseason, he can play left field. He can play first base. He can play second. He can play all over. Like he's one of these chameleons who can play. Very versatile player. But his primary position is third base. I'm willing to go through some growing pains with Otto Kemp at third and with Justin Crawford in center. And I'm more confident that Justin Crawford really won't suffer a ton of growing pains. I think he's just that good. But Otto Kemp, I think, look, he hit 8 home runs in his limited time with the Phillies. I think he flashed at times. But I think what you saw was a guy who was called up from AAA and getting his feet wet in Major League Baseball. I'm not ready to just throw that to the wayside. The most important thing about Otto Kemp, though, is he's an $800,000 player. So you're putting an $800,000 player in at third base, and you're taking your $10 million third baseman, you're trading him away for a $10 million right fielder. I'm okay with that trade-off. Now, I think some people out there will go, what about Munetaka Murakami, the third baseman from Japan who's coming over and being posted? Let's make something perfectly clear on that. The only teams, and until I'm proven wrong, I will continue to believe this. The only teams that have a shot at Japanese players are West Coast teams, being California, Seattle, maybe Arizona if they want to get involved. Boston, New York. That's it. That is it. Those are the only teams that have a shot. Because Japanese players do not want to play that far away from Japan. They want to at least have the luxury of maybe going home at some point if they have an all-star break. Or their family coming to visit them. It's really tough to do. Japan, Philadelphia. But more importantly, the Phillies have never really been involved. And they've tried, but when I say involved, it takes two to tango. The Phillies have had interest in guys like, they had interest in Sasaki. They had interest in Yamamoto. Those guys don't want to meet with the Phillies. They're not interested in coming here. So the idea that the Phillies would go big game hunting for Murakami, yeah, I think they'd like to. I think they'd like to make a pitch at least. But it's like me making a pitch to Margot Robbie. Like, it's not happening. So they've never been involved in Japanese players. The first Japanese player they signed was, I think, last year, and it was Kaio Aogi, the former closer who was released by July. So if you're thinking, oh, yeah, just sign the Japanese third baseman I keep hearing about, not going to happen. I was really surprised that Imanga signed with the Cubs, honestly. Now, you can go like, all right, well, money talks, he's being posted. But, like, they're going to do right by him, and you expect the typical Seattle's, Anaheim, Dodgers, the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Mets. Like, those are the teams that are going to be involved for this kid. That's it. There's another pitcher coming out named Imana. Same thing. No shot. So my lineup next year is JT Realmuto at catcher, and I think you sign him to a 2 or 3 year contract. You got Bryce Harper at first base. I would have no problem, by the way, if they wanted to move Bryce back to right field and they traded Alec Bohm for a first baseman, or even moving Alec Bohm to first base and putting Otto Kemp at third. They won't do any of that. But still, I wish the Phillies used the versatility of Bryce Harper more than they do. He can play DH. He can play first. He can play right field. And they don't. But Bryce would be my first baseman. Bryson Stott would be my second. Trey Turner is obviously at short. Third baseman, Otto Kemp. Left field is Brandon Marsh. Center field is Justin Crawford. And right field is a guy that you traded and acquired in that deal. The bullpen, I think everybody will be happy to see Jordan Romano never suit up for the Phillies again. David Robertson, we all knew what that was. You know, he was signed mid-season, a la like a Pedro Martinez type, old guy coming in. Let's see what he's got left in the tank. And he didn't pitch poorly necessarily, but he won't be back. Alvarado, I think, will be back. The pitching rotation is pretty much set. Wheeler will, you hope, be healthy. But the other move that I would make is I would seriously consider getting rid of that Aaron Nola contract. And I don't think they'll do it. And this isn't necessarily just my disdain for the guy because he lives to give up three-run bombs. But I think if you're watching this, you go like, whoa, like he pitched well in the postseason. Keep this in mind. He pitched well in 2 innings. He's getting paid $24 million. You're saddled for that contract for the next 5 years at $24 per. So for the next 5 years, you're paying a guy $24 million that you are pumped if he goes 2 innings. Now, the one name that I forgot was Ranger Suarez in terms of a key free agent. And it really, really irked me watching Ranger Suarez leave the mound against the Dodgers, having pitched brilliantly, knowing that's probably the last time I'll see Ranger Suarez in a Phillies uniform. For whatever reason, they seem to be content with letting him go. I would look to trade Nola and use that money that I just saved by trading Nola, and I would use that to bring back Ranger Suarez. Ranger Suarez is leaps and bounds better than Aaron Nola at this point. And Aaron Nola is, and I said this when I retired from watching his starts, he is an up-and-down player. If you look historically at his years, there is the good year, and then there is the bad year. Good year, bad year. And I'm doing the ERA here. And last year was the worst year of his career. You know, his last start, he pitched well against the Twins. He went 6 innings. I think he gave up no earned runs. It lowered his ERA to 6. Now, you might be saying to yourself, well, if he's that bad, who's taking him? Somebody. There's always a party. There's always a GM that thinks his team is close and he wants to save his job. And the biggest example I can give of that is James Shields. What was James Shields' nickname? Big Game James. He had that moniker of being a big game pitcher. I ignore the fact that he wasn't very good, or certainly wasn't very good when he was on the Padres, but the Padres found a willing partner in the Chicago White Sox, who I think at the time Kenny Williams might have been the GM, but whoever it was blinded by a little bit of a nice start by the White Sox, and they thought, we're one pitcher away. That's all. We're one pitcher. And the Padres called them up and they said, hey, we got Big Game James. There's a prospect we have in like A-ball named Fernando Tatis Jr. Do you want him? We need Big Game James. And they gladly took Big Game James. Big Game James was horrendously bad for the Chicago White Sox. There's always somebody out there willing to take your crap, especially when that crap is coming with a pedigree. And Aaron Nola, like him or not, I don't, but he comes with a pedigree of being third in franchise history in strikeouts, a former top 3 finisher in Cy Young, guy that is willing to eat innings, pitching 200 multiple years. Last year, a GM can talk themselves into this. A GM on an opposing team who thinks his team is one pitcher away from getting into the postseason can talk themselves into Aaron Nola just by saying, look, last year it was his worst year, but man, like when this guy's on, and you know that he was injury plagued. I mean, he missed a key chunk with an ankle and you know the sniffles and whatever that phantom injury was. They can talk themselves into this. And I'm not even looking for a Fernando Tatis Jr. package in return. I'm literally just looking to get out of the contract so I can take that money and take that mistake and fix it and bring back Ranger Suarez. I don't think that Dave Dombrowski will do that because like many GMs in all of sports, they're reluctant to admit when they're wrong. They are willing to drag out bad deals, drag out obvious mistakes, waiting to see if maybe there's a glimmer of hope that they turn it around and they prove that GM right until eventually they have to cut bait. And I've said this before, it's one of the biggest changes in Howie Roseman was his willingness to go like, yeah, all right, I made a mistake. We're moving on. You know, the Bryce Huff contract is a prime example. If Dave Dombrowski was in charge of the Philadelphia Eagles, Bryce Huff would still be on the Eagles. It was obvious to everybody, including Bryce Huff, right away, this pairing is not going to work out. So 5 years at $24 million. Also, if you end up getting good Aaron Nola, which I actually expect next season just because of that up, down, up, down, up, down moniker of his baseball reference page. But if you end up getting that, $24 million for a number 2 pitcher is not bad. So I would look to get out of that contract. For me personally, it's just a matter of like, I can't do it anymore. And I said this when I retired back in April before his season blew up, before I was proven correct. I was like, I can't convince myself that this guy is an ace, and then the 4th inning comes and, it's home run ball. I mean, how many years in a row are we going to watch this guy lead the majors in home runs? So I would look to rectify that mistake. I don't think they do it. And that means that your rotation next year is going to be Wheeler, Nola, Luzardo, Christopher Sanchez, and Taijuan Walker's got one more year left on his deal, but you'd hope that Andrew Painter would come to camp and he'd look really good. He looked bad this season in AAA, but you have to remember, he took 2 years off. He had never pitched above high A ball at that point, so to put him in AAA, high expectations, and he didn't live up to it, but I'm still not selling the kid. So, look, the changes I would make, I don't expect them to make. I don't expect them to trade Alec Boehm for a right fielder. I don't expect them to move on from Aaron Nola. For whatever reason, they have this I can't quit you mentality with Aaron Nola, and I think a big part of it is the fact that he was homegrown, drafted 7th overall, and at LSU, he's only worn 1 uniform, and that's why they brought him back. They signed a bad contract. They really should move on. Ranger Suarez is homegrown, but you never know it because they never bring that up. But I would rather have Ranger Suarez, who to me is an embodiment of a big game pitcher more than Aaron Nola. And I think you need guys like Ranger Suarez in the postseason more than Aaron Nola in the postseason. Ranger Suarez, I have like the utmost confidence in the postseason. Aaron Nola, I'm sitting on pins and needles waiting for the big inning to happen. But another reason why I don't think they do it is because of the lefty thing. You've already got Christopher Sanchez. You've got Jesus Luzardo. Are they going to want a third in there? Probably not. So I don't care about it personally. Like, I'm more like, look, just go with who's good. And Ranger Suarez, to me, has proven time and time again that he is the guy. I wish they'd given him that money, and they didn't. Now's the part where I ask you guys to please subscribe to the channel. Hit thumbs up if you enjoyed this. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought I sucked. But let me know what you would do. They're not going to be big game hunting, and if they do, it will be for their own players. I think we all know that. The big thing, though, is that Dave Dombrowski needs to hit on the minor moves. Last year, he did not hit on Jordan Romano. Last year, he did not hit on Max Kepler. You need to hit on those guys. It's fine if you don't go big game hunting. It's fine if you have to go to 5 below. But you need to hit on the 5. Oh, I didn't even talk about Harrison Bader. I'm not bringing Harrison Bader back. No. Not at $10 million, which is what his mutual club option is. And the big reason why is just because Harrison Bader reminds me a lot of Mike Scott, the former Sixer, who came to the Sixers and had a really, really good end of the season when he initially came over, and the Sixers got kind of fooled by that, and they signed him to a 2-year deal, and the next season it was pretty obvious quickly that Mike Scott was not that guy, and now Mike Scott was overpaid. If you want to bring back Harrison Bader, I'm not dying on that hill, but just be warned that the Harrison Bader that we all saw, the Harrison Bader that was coming up clutch and hitting well over 300 with the Phillies and ended up being this like legitimate impact bat for them that no one really saw coming, that is a fluke. I think you're about to see like 250 Harrison Bader show back up if you bring him back next season. But the good thing is, look, if you bring him back, the guy comes with elite defense. But if you bring him back or you put him in right field, if I bring him back, I'm probably doing that. I'm not putting him in center because, once again, I think that's Justin Crawford's job. But I would move on from Harrison Bader. I think what you got for Harrison Bader was great. Thank you for your service. You move on from him because the reality is Harrison Bader will probably be available next offseason if you really, really want him. Just the reality of the situation at this point. He's one of those guys that's probably going to be signing 1-year contracts for a while. He's going to be always just available. So, or a player like him will be available. So that's what I would do. Not bringing back Harrison Bader and actually hitting on some of these key. I don't want to call him Bart because like Max Kepler was $10 million, but like the lesser known, the December, January free agents that just randomly pop up. You need to hit on those guys. And let me just see what happens with the bullpen as well. As I said, like we all know that Duran is the closer. Banks will be back. Strom already his options vested. Alvarado will be back. Let's see if you can find another guy in there. All right. Again, subscribe, please. Thumbs up, thumbs down. Let me know what you do in the comment section. As always, go Phillies.